Hello. This digital essay will be done on social isolation and bullying within urban youth settings. Social isolation and bullying within urban youth settings are common. Lucero states from their study they identified co-occurrence of isolation loneliness and other crisis concerns, including depression/sadness, anxiety, and multiple suicidality indicators, with higher rates among racial/ethnic minority, transgender, and gender diverse, and younger individuals. Other issues that stem from social isolation would be the potential for bullying, such as community violence, bullying/peer victimization, and loneliness. Jaher defines loneliness as a profound and distressing state where individuals perceive themselves as unworthy, deeply unhappy, and profoundly isolated. Community violence is defined as violence that occurs in neighborhoods such as homicides, shootings, assaults, robberies with assault, and rape. When addressing bullying, the concept tends to stem from an urban youth's experience at school, which may transfer from more hidden spaces such as the bathrooms and locker rooms to frequently experienced in open spaces such as the playgrounds, hallways, and classrooms. When considering how this may affect youth, there is abundant documentation for an association between exposure to bullying and adverse psychological consequences, such as poor life satisfaction, mental health problems, and suicidal behavior. Some mental health issues that can be experienced are depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. In this case, bullying and peer victimization are being used interchangeably, where approximately 10% to 15% of youth experience peer victimization, which can later result in long-lasting effects that may persist in adulthood, including diminished self-esteem, physical and mental health problems, and low-quality relationships. When looking into the experience of urban youth, social isolation, and bullying, there can be contributing factors that may cause youth to experience such things. An item that would play a part in the experience of social isolation and bullying would be resource deprivation, which historically impacts marginalized communities. If a youth were to grow up in impoverished neighborhoods, they show significant increases in resource-driven conduct behaviors. Lee states that experiencing community violence while in impoverished neighborhoods may lead to weakened conventional norms and compromised pro-social behaviors, and as a result, the youth would be more likely to turn to delinquent peers, alcohol, and substance use. Other contributing factors to social isolation and bullying within urban youth would be having a negative school environment, targeted interactions that involve intricate power dynamics. Madsen mentions that the experiences of urban youth while in a negative school environment where students perceive their peers and teachers as unsupportive is strongly associated with loneliness. This form of social isolation can contribute to experiences of bullying, where there may be differences that may be viewed as an opportunity to antagonize other students for their differences. 2 studies found that ethnic/racial minorities were more likely to be bullied due to their ethnic/race if they chose to associate with peers from an ethnic group other than their own. Other factors of ethnicity/race that would be targeted at are speaking one's own language at school, being of minority race, ethnicity, citizenship, status, and or religion as well. As a result of bullying victimization due to these differences, some individuals reported attempting to assimilate into the culture surrounding them by learning the local language better as a way of protecting themselves from the risk of bullying victimization. Other contributing factors are being a part of the LGBTQIA+ community and then varying further into minority races such as Asian, Black, Indigenous, and Latinx. Madsen mentions that there is an abundant documentation for an association between exposure to bullying and adverse psychological consequences such as poor life satisfaction, mental health problems, and suicidal behavior. When addressing the experiences of youth that identify as part of the LGBTQIA community, it is reported that suicidal ideation and attempts are 2 and 5 more times to be present amongst the LGBTQIA community in comparison to their heterosexual peers. The LGBTQIA community were 2 times more likely to experience bullying and cyberbullying than their heterosexual peers. When looking at racial background, Black LGBTQIA youth were the only group where it was observed that both suicidal ideation and attempt increased over time. When further looking into the negative impact of social isolation and bullying, Madsen stated that there is an abundant documentation for an association between exposure to bullying and adverse psychological consequences, such as poor life satisfaction, mental health problems, and suicidal behavior. Lucero mentioned that the experience of the youth during COVID-19 revealed that depression/sadness was at 53.4% higher, relationship problems were at 51.1% higher, anxiety/stress were 40.2% higher, and suicide rates were at 39% higher. The outcomes with the highest of the co-occurrence. These were the outcomes with the highest rates of co-occurrence. Lee further mentions and supports with a previous study on the effects of loneliness and social isolation on youth mental and physical health, where it resulted in a strong association between isolation and depression, anxiety, substance use, and suicide.